Good morning. On behalf of our board of directors team and our staff, welcome everybody to our advocacy meeting this morning. We have a number of copies being sent around, some additional information. Great to have you all here this morning. And we have a number of topics on our agenda as usual. We are pretty purposeful today that we have allowed a lot of time for Q&A at the conclusion of our meeting. So we're going to jump right in. I want to first of all thank Dan Johnson is here along with Brody Johnson filming today for our guest on Zoom. If you have a question, please submit that into your chat column. All right, let's jump right in. I want to first talk about the federal scholarship tax credit, and it's a pleasure to welcome Hugh Ady, principal at Statecraft, for that update today.
Great. Thank you, Tom, and thank you to the Salem Chamber for allowing me to present today. As Tom said, my name is Hugh Ady. I'm a lobbyist based here in Salem. I'm here today on behalf of an education reform association called Better Public Education, and I'm here to talk about something called the federal scholarship tax credit. Last year, on the 4th of July, the President of the United States signed House Resolution 1, also known as the One Big Beautiful Bill. And the thing about that bill is it was big. And in that bill was actually contained a lot of provisions, many of which we're still learning about. Buried in that bill, there's actually a tax provision or a tax credit, which is what I'm here to speak about today. And this directly affects Oregon and the other 49 states. This is a historic opportunity for the state of Oregon, and it is not going to cost the taxpayers of Oregon a penny of state funds. And so what the federal scholarship tax credit is it allows now any individual taxpayer in the country to donate up to $1,700 per year to a special type of nonprofit called a scholarship granting organization. And that SGO can turn around then and provide scholarships for students attending public schools or private schools, as well as for after-school activities and special needs services. This program is not capped. There's no cap on it, so states can raise a limitless amount of money. This is direct infusion of federal dollars into our students in the public education and the private education system. And nothing like this has ever been done in the country, and this was only possible because of a budget reconciliation bill and that passed out of the United States Congress. Now, everyone in this room is aware, been reading the news the past several years, is Oregon has one of the worst performing public education systems in the country. And that's not just an education issue, that's an economic issue. That's impacting the workforce that is graduating and coming out and asking the business owners in this room for jobs. We are consistently one of the worst ranking states in our reading, writing, and math scores. And that has had a significant effect as far as outflight of the state. And so this is a golden opportunity for Oregon to have an education turnaround and an economic turnaround here in the state. Now, there's a catch with this program, as some of you know. The Senate parliamentarian in the United States Senate made sure that a provision was included that required every governor in the state to affirmatively opt into the program. So politically, 30 governors in the country have opted into the program. Most of them are Republicans. In fact, all except 2 of them are Republicans. The governor of Colorado, Jared Polis, who's term limited and leaving office, said it was a no-brainer to opt into the program because it was free federal money. And so he opted his state into the program. Some other states led by Democrat governors, their supermajority Republican legislatures overrode those governors and opted their states in. And so what we're left with now is about 19 to 20 states that have not opted into the program. Initially, within weeks of Congress passing this law, Governor Kotek indicated, or her office did, that they would not opt into the program. And then when they were followed up with on that, they actually rescinded that and said they were looking at the program, and they examined it for a year. The thing about it is, as I said, is the money is so good. Estimates say that they could raise up to $500 million, $750 million, or $1 billion that would go directly to Oregon public school and private school students. It doesn't go to the school district. It doesn't go to middle management. It goes in the form of scholarships. So you're talking about a direct infusion. A few weeks ago, the governor announced that Oregon would not be participating in the program, joining several other Democrats across the country. I'm actually optimistic. I was disappointed, but I wasn't surprised. I was on a stakeholder phone call with the U.S. Senator a few months ago, and he expressed confidence that within a decade, every single state in the union is going to have opted into this program. Simply put, the money and the opportunity is too good. And so I just want to reiterate this is an opportunity for the state to have that education turnaround that we're looking for, and it doesn't cost any of the business owners in this room a dollar of state taxes. It is completely a federal program. It will allow anyone in this room to donate up to $1,700 directly to students. And so what that means is you could have school districts that could actually organize these nonprofits that have local fundraisers, which we've all been to fundraisers, and they can raise that money. And on their federal tax return, their tax bill will go down by a minimum of $1,700. We expect that the contribution amount will go up every single year as Congress will come back and convene, that they'll incrementally raise that contribution limit. We could wake up 5 or 6 years from now and it could be up to $5,000, $6,000 that any individual can donate to students across the country. Now that Oregon hasn't opted into the program, what that means is everyone in this room can still donate to an SGO. You just have to donate to an SGO in a state that's opted in. So if you want to help students in Ohio, or Kentucky, or Texas, or Utah, or Florida, you can do that. But what's going to happen now is hundreds of millions and potentially billions of federal tax dollars will now exit the state of Oregon, go beyond our borders, and go to students in other states instead of staying here in Oregon to help develop your future workforce and your future workers. That's what we're faced with now. And so, like I said, the association that are representing better public education, we're putting together a statewide coalition called Opt-in Oregon. We've been privileged and honored to have the Marion County Board of Commissioners join that, the Washington County Business Council, the Medford Chamber, charter school associations. And so we're continuing to build that coalition. But that's what the federal scholarship tax credit is, and that's the opportunity for the state of Oregon and every business owner here in the room.
Our call to action.
Well, the call to action is the handout is to join the coalition. That's the call to action, and to directly contact your elected officials and to let them know that you want the state of Oregon to opt into this program. You want the governor to opt into this program. We've approached large business organizations in this state and asked them to incorporate this into their plan, including the Oregon Business Plan. You know, we have that summit every December. A lot of corporations come in, but that education plank we feel is wanting as far as the solutions that need to be offered for the state. If you look at Massachusetts, they have built an absolutely massive coalition of 2,800 organizations. Every major corporation in the state of Massachusetts out there is calling for their governor to opt into this program. That's where the state needs to go. This should not be a partisan issue, Republican or Democrat. This should be a nonpartisan issue. Turning down free federal money that would go directly to our public school students and our private school students is not wise. The proficiency grades that come out indicate that many of these students that are struggling are low-income students. Now, how many of those low-income students can afford a tutor? Very few of them. This program would allow them to hire a tutor to help with their math class, their English class, reading and writing. And what happens when a D student becomes a C student and a C student becomes a B student and so on? What happens to those parents to start to see that turnaround in many of these school districts that are struggling? So that's the call to action.
Turn it over to questions for Hugh Ady. Yes, Representative Marion.
Don't need to contact me because I totally support this.
Okay, great. Thank you, Representative. And he has been very supportive. He has been a champion. So thank you, Representative.
Representative Farrington, we hope you're hearing that as well. Well,
I am going to shock everybody in the room. I'm glad everyone's sitting down, but when the dam broke as far as opt-ins, so within about a 2 to 3 week period, every governor, there was a tidal wave when it went public, really. All these governors opted in. The National Teachers Union released a letter. They circulated a letter to governors in certain states, and it was very pointed and basically said, under no circumstances are you to opt into this program. And if you do, these could be the consequences politically for you. And so someone like Governor Paulus demonstrated a lot of leadership based on, the political composition of that state. We're looking at Pennsylvania. We hope that Governor Shapiro makes the right decision. Massachusetts is another one that we feel could potentially opt in. This is surprising, but the governor of New York, who's up for re-election, announced 2 months ago she was going to opt the state into the program. So that was shocking. I was not expecting that. She still has to do it officially, but she signaled that she was going to opt the state in. The governor of Virginia, Governor Youngkin, before he exited office, he opted the state in. Governor Spanberger has not rescinded that opt-in since she took office. They've already got SGOs, 8 or 9, that are set up and are raising money. So, these states that opt in, like I said, the bigger states, they're looking at billions of dollars raised for their students outside of traditional funding streams. But that's the opposition.
Jen, followed by
And specifically, why didn't you know?
So the comment the governor made, and I'm a plain-spoken man, so I'll be blunt. I was disappointed to not see this included in the Oregon Prosperity Council's recommendation. In fact, I contacted them and urged them to include that. I understand that it wasn't even discussed. What she'd said and when she announced her opposition was at that recommendation meeting. The quote, I believe, was it wasn't the rules that were issued from the current administration were, quote, not consistent with Oregon values. So it was vague. I'm not exactly sure. I can guess at what she was referring to. Again, the governor is in an election year. I think we all understand that. I will say the fact that she withdrew her initial opposition and considered it for a year, I do believe the governor and her office see the potential money here. Frankly, I think most of the governors in the country see it. There's just that political consequence for the holdouts if they opt in. But we're going to reach a point is once the money starts to roll between these states and those numbers are released publicly. I've received several emails from people saying now that the governor's made her decision, I'm looking at SGOs in other states. I will donate to students in Montana, in Utah, in Florida. I will help people in other states because we've got a lot of kind-hearted people in the state who want to see students rise. And so once you see public numbers come out from Oregon, the exodus of tax dollars leaving, I think that's going to apply quite a bit of political pressure in the state.
few questions from our online audience. How are these scholarships distributed and what are the limitations on them to the students receiving them?
So obviously there's always, fraud concerns. I was on a call with the U.S. Treasury about 6 weeks ago. They're implementing sideboards. They're going to release rules in September, I think, around the program. You'll have to, comply with audits, but right. Yeah. So you receive the money, the SGO, they're able to package it. They have to comply with the rules that are released. There will be explanations as far as how that's done. I think you can't. With the SGOs, you can't just give it to students at one school. There has to be a multi-school application. That's where that school district model comes in. So you could have a school district SGO what you could do is if you have the information of the students in your district who are really struggling, you could target scholarships for tutoring to those students and lift them up. But more rules will be forthcoming. I'll give them my contact information and I'm happy to.
Great. Last questions for you. Yes, TJ.
You want public policy to make a motion to have
yeah, typically that would come from our advocacy oversight committee, but we've really entertain that. Our vice president of advocacy would entertain that. So TJ, if you'd like to put forward a motion, again, this motion would be advising our board of directors to take a position on this. Go ahead, TJ.
motion I didn't do, just Tom stated to have the board of directors consider opting into this.
Okay, and I have a second by Zalicki. Okay, any other discussion? Take all those in favor indicate by saying aye. By the way, I need one point of clarification. Each company gets one vote. So if we have multiple representatives from a company, I need just one vote. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Any in opposition? Okay, we will bring that forward to our board of directors team. Jameson, make note that we had no opposition to that. Great. Thank you, Hugh, for bringing this in front of us. And thank you, advocacy group, for heading this up the chain.
Thank you.
Just to clarify, that's a tax credit, not a
Tax credit, dollar for dollar, not a
Yeah.
deduction.
Right.
Your return
On
will go
your
down.
credit.
Yep.
Yeah.
We are now going to hop over to an update on the Detroit Lake drawdown by Marion County Commissioner Kevin Cameron.
Thanks, Tom. It's great to be here. I have two things I have to do is First off, we all feel really safe because Sheriff Hunter is here this morning. Thank you, Sheriff, for all you do. Seriously, appreciate it. And then, Ryan, did you get your $10 yet?
Jason Bailey didn't pay me on the bet. I paid him.
You did? Okay. There was a little side bet last night at my house that Ryan would get here before 7 o'clock this morning and Jason would pay him $10. So just wanted to give you some inside information.
Never bet against Collier.
Yeah. Hey, it's great to be here. I know you've all heard about this. If you haven't heard about the Detroit Lake drawdown, maybe you've been underwater someplace. I don't know. I think Tom handed out a sheet that is for public knowledge. Basically the drawdown is as far as we know happening today. The Army Corps is not given one sign or smoke signal that they're backing off on the drawdown. I want to separate two things though. The lake, and I know I had a boat at Canes. I have a home up there. We had to pull our boat a week ago last Monday to get the boats out of the water. That's not connected to this drawdown. The lake, that was lack of snowpack. And if we do have any snow in the mountains now, we have no trees to keep it cool. It melts because of the fires that have caused that. So it was a lack of snowpack, lack of late rains. And the third thing was, is the Army Corps. We recently had an individual who was in charge, Eric Peterson, who would work with the system, and sometimes he would get to negotiate with some of the BIOP people and be able to reduce the flows out of the dam below the BIOP levels. And I'm going to talk in language that some of you may understand. 1,200 cubic feet per second. And when you think of that number, it's the amount of water that is coming out of the Big Cliff Dam. I don't know if many of you have driven up there and you go, why is that water flowing out of that dam? The Big Cliff Dam is the regulating dam. Detroit is just the reservoir, and Big Cliff is what keeps the flow going down the river in a certain cubic feet per second. He used to negotiate and cut back those flows. So if the minimum flow at a time was 1,200 cubic feet per second because of the biop that for this fish, they realized that if they kept water in the dam, they could mix cold water on the bottom and warm water on top and keep the temperature right. And if you think about that dam up there, there's these gates up above, and when you get below those gates, you can't do that mixing. Well, this year they didn't change anything. They just hit the minimum flow, or the flows that were required, so the lake went down faster than it normally did. That was not related to this drawdown that we're talking about today. The drawdown is, if you know anything about the reservoir goes down, and they talk in elevation, goes down to 1,450 feet in the wintertime. So there's a couple ramps up. There's a winter ramp up there that you can still access the lake. If you're a fisherman, you know, the kokanee fish is one of the best kokanee fisheries in Oregon. You can still get a boat in at 1,450 feet. That's the normal pool that they take the dam down every winter, because they need this for flood control, that extra 100 feet. That dam can fill up, and back in '96, we had an event that within days, that dam went boom. We had the floods, and they were within hours of having to let water out and flood even more. So that dam can fill really quick. So that 1,450 feet is the normal winter pool. What the Army Corps is saying they're going to do is this year they're going to take it down to 1,425. So they're going to go down 25 more feet. 1,425 feet was what the level of the lake was. If you remember this, back in 2019, I have a picture of it in my cabin. There's a stage or a old wagon that's down in the mud. That was the year we got down to 1,425 feet. The key that year, though, was they were within days of not having enough water to hit the minimum flow. Salem needs 700 cubic feet per second coming out of Big Cliff to fill their water supply. They were within days of not having enough water coming into the dam and enough water to release, and it started to rain, and they got out of that situation. So that's this year's 1,425. So there won't be a lot of turbidity. So they're going to do this year. If they do it, if we can't stop them, we'll talk about why we're trying to stop them or how we're doing it. If they can't stop, if we can't stop them, they're going to say, hey, look, we didn't have a turbidity issue. Well, why didn't they? Because they've been that low before. There's not a lot of stuff that's going to come down. But what the plan would be is the next year they do the drawdown, they would go down another, so to 1420, they go down another 30 feet. They go down to 1395. 1,395 feet elevation it's never happened in the history of that dam at once it was filled. Who knows what's down there? Who knows what the turbidity would be? They were required to do a turbidity study. They haven't done it. You can read about some of that stuff in the document that I gave you. They haven't done it. So that is the concern. And if they go down to 1395, I'm fearful that then they're going to do that for like 2 weeks in December. So they'll take it down to 1395, and their modeling shows that when they get the rain, and you think about the lake, it's like this. So you have less water when you're at 1395. It's easier to fill back up to the 1450 range. So what they're saying is that after they draw it down for 2 weeks, they're going to get enough rain to bring it back up to the 1450 level in the end of December or January. What if we don't have rain? What if we have a drought? So those are all the questions that are out there. So let me talk a little bit about some of the meetings I've been in. I was in a meeting with our Washington, D.C. lobbyists and 2 individuals from NOAA, NIMS. And NIMS is the group that has said, you're going to do this drawdown. And in that meeting, I said, who made this decision? And they said, well, we did. And I said, who is we? And it was 2 individuals, one from Washington, one from Oregon, and said, us, these 2 here out in the Northwest. This did not come out from DC. So part of what we're trying to do is work with the lawsuit that we filed. The city of Salem's filed a lawsuit, and you're going to see Monday, you're going to see us file an injunction. The Army Corps knows that we're going to try to do that. And you might have already seen that, and the environmentalists have joined in, and they're going to fight this thing on their side too. And we're doing everything we can at the county. The city of Salem's pretty much in there. They're not, I don't know that they're going to join our injunction, that we haven't been able to get them to commit to do that. But that's some of the stuff that's going on. And the science of this thing, these NIMS people, I asked them the question, I go, so why are you taking it down to 1395? And they said, well, because the fingerlings, these salmon, and we could talk all day about how these salmon got up there. They catch them down at Minto, and they take them back up and release them above the dam in the Brighton Bush and on the Sandy M. These fingerlings, when they come down, they will go within 25 feet. If they've got, like, if you think about this, if you've got some sort of flow going out of the dam, they'll go down 25 feet. It's about the level will go down, and they'll go through wherever that is, if there's a hole in the dam where the water's going out. The 1395 foot takes them 50 feet. They're going to still be 50 feet above the hole. And I asked them, I said, so how do you count these? What's the definition of success? Well, it's the amount of fish that pass through. I go, well, how do you count them? I go, I want to be there when you count them. I mean, think about this. I mean, this is, and then their definition of success is how many fish pass out. It's not how many fish come back. It's how many fish pass out. And so we have no results of what's happened down in Green Peter of the fish. And you saw the millions of kokanee that were killed as a result of passing these salmon out. So the science is not there. The results are not there. And so we're saying, hey, why don't you measure what you're doing already and see if there's results before you go and do this? Those are some of the things that we're doing. I'll stop there, Tom, because I know we have limited time, and I'll answer any questions.
I appreciate that time for questions. Questions for Commissioner Cameron? Yes, Melissa.
If they have no way to track this result, what is their answer when you say, why are you moving forward? Like, why are you moving forward? And that result.
Well, they're saying they're results will be how many fish get downstream. They're gonna increase the amount of fish that get downstream. I don't know that they do. I said, I want to know in December where you're gonna be and who's counting these fish. How do you track this? Yeah,
They can't answer that.
they haven't yet. Well, we're pushing them. I might have to get somebody with snorkeling gear and cameras and we'll go down to the river, start counting fish.
And clicker.
Commissioner Cameron, any call to action from our group here today?
I think, hasn't the chamber already sent a letter in support of our lawsuit? If you haven't, I think, you could definitely take action and support the city of Salem specifically for their water supply, Staten, their water supply, because they rely on this. So you could take a position of support of stopping the drawdown until there is actual proof that it works and that we have all the safety things in place to protect over 200,000 people's water supply.
Is there a motion from the floor to do just that? Recommend to our board of directors. Anne Marie Defoe has,
I'll second.
Zach Stone is a second. Boy, we're making things happen today, folks.
Tom, there's also one other thing, the Detroit Lake Conservancy Group, Detroit Lake Foundation, which I'm a board member of, they are taking positions and they're working with lobbyists. They're also I think they're trying to organize a rally. So I'll get that link over to the chamber and we can forward that on too. So.
I would make a friendly amendment that the chamber also sent a letter to the city encouraging them to join the injunction.
Does the maker of the motion accept the friendly amendment? Is the seconder? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. In opposition. Okay. Kevin, thank you for your work and for your update and for keeping us right on schedule today. We know we have a couple, we got a good one coming up. It's a pleasure to welcome Katelyn Harrison to Salem. Katelyn resides in Idaho, and Chris Eiler, who we often see with the U.S. Chamber, was unable to join us this month, but Katelyn traveled in to give us an update of what's occurring at the federal level. Katelyn, great to have you today.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me come and join you all today. That's the end. Okay, perfect. All right. So for those of you that don't know, the U.S. Chamber is the largest business organization in the world. We represent over 3 million different members and companies, ranging from small mom and pop shops to the NFL as a member of the U.S. Chamber. We also represent small local chambers, state chambers, trade associations. Really, all of those folks depend on us to be their voice of reason for business in Washington, D.C. We go in front of the U.S. Supreme Court. We've really ramped up our litigation team at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce in the last few years. And so we've got a great team there. We go in front of the U.S. Congress and also the White House as well. So in terms of what I do, myself and my boss, Chris Eiler, two-person team, we work with chambers in the Northwest. So we are constantly traveling in the states of Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, and Alaska. And our job is really to have a two-way conversation. It includes not only letting you guys know what's happening at the federal level, but also ensuring that we have what's happening in the Northwest in DC. I was actually born and raised in Portland, Oregon, and I can tell you as a Northwest person that my wonderful colleagues in the East sometimes believe that the country stops at the Mississippi River, and I assure you, for as long as we're in that role, that is not the case. So to that end, when you guys sign on to our coalition letters that we send out, sometimes we'll ask for support on dealing with business taxes, looking at energy grid and needing to get involved in that space, perhaps permitting reform. As is valuable to your guys' chamber, it does count and it does matter when your names show up. It is noticed. So thank you very much for doing that when appropriate. We really do appreciate it. Also, what we do is issue briefings, which is what I'm doing for you today. And we can also help with DC fly-in. So if your group ever wants to go to Washington, DC, as a chamber and meet with federal agencies, meet with members of Congress, we can help you and ensure that you've got the expert knowledge that you need on the front end of those meetings so that you can go prepared into those discussions, and also so that your time is valuable. We really want to be that strong partner that we have right now. So, going into this, I'm going to start with the economy. The federal economy is, in best case, what I would say right now is wobbly. It is growing, but it has absorbed quite a bit of significant shocks, but it's also showing signs of strain in that regard. The good news is that growth does remain respectable. The US economy expanded about 2.1% in 2025, and first quarter 26 came in at about that same growth. Reminder, marker of success, the US Chamber says that a strong and growing economy is at a 3% mark. So while we're not in a bad shape by any means, we certainly could be doing better. It is important to note, though, that the economy was more successful in the years of 2023 and 2024, and that is due to several headwinds. One of those is tariffs. Those are continuing to work their way through the system. That is causing strain on the economy. Immigration restrictions have slowed workforce growth in our country, and uncertainty surrounding the conflict in Iran has put pressures on the energy space and cost. Despite those challenges, the economy, though, has remained surprisingly resilient. Again, we're looking at that 2.12% growth at this point. Business and consumers don't necessarily feel that same strength. Families are continuing to face affordability challenges, and businesses are really navigating through higher input costs and uncertainty. Well, if inflation, that remains elevated as well. Your prices are up 4.2% year over year in May, and the Federal Reserve's preferred inflation measure is still well above its 2% target. Why I say that, and that's important, we're not anticipating rate cuts before the end of this year. We are potentially looking at a rate increase from the feds, but we're continuing to monitor that space. Positive side, wages are still outpacing inflation. That is helping consumer spending. Retail sales and overall spending has remained solid, and that continues to be really a key pillar of that economic growth. Going into Congress and what we're looking at right now. Next slide. So as we head into the August recess, Congress is wrapping up a busy legislative period. The House is already adjourned until September, and the Senate is spending this week right now trying to complete as much work as possible before they head out for that recess. Before departing, the House passed several significant measures. First, it approved a clean continuing resolution, or a CR, that would fund the government through December 4th. The House also passed their version of the National Defense Authorization Act, along with another budget resolution, which opens the door for an additional third reconciliation package to occur later this year. The Senate is now working through its own priorities. Ideally, senators are wanting to pass a CR that extends government funding through December 11th. So you already have a difference in dates there. They're going to have to work that out when they come back in the fall. They're considering a Russian sanctions bill, which was a major point of interest for late Senator Lindsey Graham. So they're working through that right now. They're trying to advance lower level nominations that are required to go through the US Senate. And they are also discussing their own version of a Senate budget reconciliation measure. And in addition, the White House really would like to have Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche confirmed into his role officially. Now, he did get out of committee for approval, and so now that means a final vote, which again, it's this week that the Senate has to work. So this all needs to happen by tomorrow. So we'll see kind of what they do. Bottom line, though, is all of these are sort of not deadline required. They don't have to finish any of this work before they leave August recess. All of these deadlines of these issues that they're working on really come to fruition when they come back in the fall time. And so that's something that we're continuing to monitor as we move forward into those deadlines. Next. So housing, you can go ahead, next one. Thank you. So this is a space that we've not historically been involved in the US Chamber, but obviously housing is impacting workforce and businesses in many different ways. And so we've leaned in on the federal side to provide as much ability for communities to have tools to create housing as best suits them. One of the ways we did that was we partnered with the American Enterprise Institute, and we've gone over 6,000 different communities in the country, cities, counties, states, and we have pulled data on what the community's housing looks like. So this QR code on this screen will take you to the city of Salem, and it'll provide you data on medium housing costs, supply costs, population numbers. And so you can go there to look at Salem. You can also expand it to the state of Oregon or into other areas if you have interest on that. So on the development of housing on federal legislation, this year they did pass the 21st Century Road to Housing Act, which is something that the U.S. Chamber was very supportive of because it really tries to responsibly roll back regulatory burdens so that communities can ideally increase housing supply. And so we were very supportive of that measure. If you were to go into a bit of the details that you'll see in that playbook that some of you may have pulled up, we're going to see that the Salem metropolitan area faces a housing shortage of approximately 10,400 homes. That's equal to about 6.1% of your total housing stock in the region. To address the gap, the report estimates that Salem could add up to about 1,600 homes annually through key policy changes. First, the ability to allow smaller lots and new subdivisions alone could create 400 additional homes each year, with projected prices of about 6% below what today's newly built homes are priced at. Second, expanding opportunities for duplexes, townhomes, and ADUs on existing lots could add an additional 700 homes annually, with a projected median cost of about $343,000, which is 37% below what comparable infill housing is at currently in the city. Third, allowing more housing development near jobs and commercial areas could generate an additional about 500 homes each year. And the report also notes that 1.8% of homes built in new subdivisions since 2000 have been townhomes. So while the median price of a newly built single-family home in a subdivision is reached in the area about $497,000. That said, being from Oregon, I know we have land restrictions. I know that we are required to work within our tiny UGBs. However, the point of this playbook, again, is to provide you guys with real data and numbers so that we have a baseline to be able to have these conversations realistically. Next slide. So going into transportation infrastructure, next slide. We are at a pretty critical inflection point on the transportation front. In 2026, Congress is required to take up their next surface transportation bill, and the choices made in that legislation are really going to be shaping our economy, safety, and competitiveness in our country for years to come. But we really need to be honest about the challenges, and one of those within the transportation infrastructure bill is the Highway Trust Fund. There is a massive growing shortfall. That trust fund is at about $33 billion shortfall at this point. That needs to be addressed. So where we're at, that trust fund has not increased the federal gas tax since 1993. So it's sat at 18.4 cents since 1993. And with more fuel efficient vehicles and electric vehicles, remember, do not pay into that pool. It's really put a strain on that particular piece. So we're not recommending at the U.S. Chamber to increase taxes on that. We are actually recommending to delete the Highway Trust Fund in its entirety and replace it with a different mechanism to fund the roads. And so this is something that we've actually gotten quite a bit of support on either side of the aisle. If you were to ask your standard rural driver, because distance, how much money do you think you spend each year on the federal gas tax? The answer is usually going to be several thousands, upper hundreds, a good chunk of change. The reality is your standard rural driver spends about $250 a year on the federal gas tax, looking at all of those miles driven. And so by deleting the gas tax, what we are proposing is an annual user fee. So for small sedans, you're looking at about $135 a year. And then for larger SUVs, trucks, you're looking at $165 a year up to your major commercial vehicles of $4,600 per year. We feel that able to institute this, it should be financially pretty easy to do so because states already have to do registration annually. And so we feel like there's a pretty easy avenue to work through that piece. The approach and its advantages, it would obviously lower or eliminate the federal gas tax at the pump, so you could see some relief at the pump. It avoids privacy concerns that come with mileage-based systems. No tracking is required on it, and it provides stable, predictable funding because every time you bring a new vehicle on the road, you're getting that additional support in that measure. So that's something that we're working through, but that's also why you've not seen a bill come out of Congress or out of the House yet, because that is a major sticking point in the Transportation Committee along with rail safety. But this is just such a bizarre concept for some members of the House to get behind on doing away with taxes that it's been a conversation. So next. Okay, to end up here, I'm going to go through kind of a general 2026 midterm report. We're going into the election in November, so this is an overview of where we're at. Go ahead. All right, so on the Senate side, you're really looking at 4 seats as your toss-up of what's going to define the majority. And for the record, these seats have changed. As of about 3 months ago, you had Georgia and North Carolina were very much in play as term as toss-up state, but you've now shifted those to lean Democrat, and the states have now shifted for what's in toss-up. So in Maine, obviously you have Senator Susan Collins, who's never lost an election ever. And we know that the Democrats had to change their candidate. That just recently happened. Could the new individual be a threat? Perhaps, because that gentleman that's running, Troy Jackson, is the former Senate leader of the Maine Senate. So that proposes a real race to watch. You've got Ohio as well, but Michigan is interesting because earlier this week, particularly in the Democrat primary, was a self-proclaimed Democrat socialist that won that election, and he's going to be going up against last time against a Democrat stronghold and just barely lost. That's going to be sort of your start of what happens with socialism, how is that recognized in this country? And then Alaska is also considered a toss-up. That's interesting because that state does ranked choice voting, and the current Senator Dan Sullivan, strong candidate, has been in there for quite some time. You have him running against another individual named Mary Peltola, who was a Democrat member of the House or the U.S. Congress for Alaska. She lost her election to the current sitting House member, Nick Begich. She's now back to try again. Interestingly enough, another Republican candidate has shown up who's been a longtime forester in the community, has been around for many years, and his name is Dan Sullivan. So on the ballot, you have Dan Sullivan, and Mary Peltola, and the other names as well. So they went to the courts and tried to get rid of the forester, but that was denied. So we'll see what goes on there. Next. On the House front, what's most important here is not so much seeing the names, but the colors. So what you're looking at right now, you've got 59 retiring or running members for another office. I would point out that there are slightly more Republicans that are retiring or leaving than Democrats right now. But in your toss-up column, you can see that there is way more Republican seats that are considered a toss-up than there are Democrat. And we're also not anticipating a wave. The years of waves, as we view it, are behind us. You're not going to see a 60-seat push. Why? Because people are moving in the country now, not so much for job opportunities at this point, but to go and live with people that think like them. So you're not really seeing massive swings in those seats anymore. So next. Let's get this one. Okay, so balance of power. Everyone always asks, what is a legitimate poll that I can look at? Which one can I depend on? So here's the thing. I know you talked about betting, so it seems like you guys are kind of supportive of that here. So in the political report, right, you're getting phone calls from people and hoping that they're not having a bad day and kind of throwing their voice. Poly market, I understand it's not regulated. Gambling is problematic. However, people are putting money behind their opinions. So in this day and age, this one seems more accurate. And for the record, Poly Market was correct on the President Trump versus Kamala Harris poll when all of the other real polls were completely off. So here we are. What we're looking at today for what could happen in the balance of power. A Democrat sweep is 46% likely of happening. A Republican Senate and a Democrat House with 41% likelihood chance of occurring. A Republican sweep, which is keeping what we're at right now, is a 13% likelihood. And having a Democrat Senate and a Republican House is 1.1% likelihood. So this just gives you a feeling of where we're at right now in terms of temperature on politics in this country. And so just wanted to share that data with you. Next. And those are my remarks. So thanks for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Katelyn, thank you for coming for a visit. Questions for Katelyn on the US Chamber of Federal Policies? Yes, Dave.
I'm curious why isn't we at the chamber, no one talked about the inflation, positive inflation, which is our debt. The last time we had Clinton was president, there was no debt. Now we're at 41 trillion, which is $1 billion charge for 1 billion paid for. How come no one talks about that? That's the inflation. All of us who had homes in 1995 or so, it's around $400,000. Now those houses are worth $2 million just because of inflation. But no one talks about inflation. What's your comment about it?
Well, the cause of inflation is a lot of different things that are coming into effect right now.
I'll say 41 trillion is the cause.
I mean, that's definitely a cause. And the reality is that inflation does have impacts on what's going on in our economy, right? That's very, very obvious. But I would also say that it is something that we track. I mean, I pointed out in the remarks that we're at an inflationary measure here of 4.2%. That's very, very critical to where we're at and where we can grow in our economy and our workplace. And so you're correct, sir. That is something that is very critical to what's going on with the debt. And that's something that we're also very aware of with business processes, is ensuring that inflation is under control. So.
Additional questions?
I have a bunch of semis, so I'm not sure that $20 a month or just 3 year,
Okay.
That'd be great.
Okay, that's actually, it is helpful feedback. Maybe if you and I can talk afterwards, because we are still collecting data on this for this discussion. And so, yeah, let's talk about it.
Katelyn, when we last heard an address from Chris, it was very evident that the US Chamber and the Oval Office were not lock in step on things. What is the relationship right now with the US Chamber and President Trump and his administration? I know that tariffs was something really pulling apart the relationship. Where does that relationship sit now?
So we have always been very vocal that we are not in support of tariffs in the way that they are being used right now. We are in support of targeted tariffs, but not in the way the admin is doing it. We are going to always be the voice of support of free enterprise. And so anytime that an issue comes out that negatively impacts that, we're going to vocalize it. That said, we have been able to work with the administration on other things that we can agree on. We just had the Secretary of Energy come and meet with our member companies at the US Chamber. We've had Secretary Pete Hegseth come and speak related to military matters. We try and find ways we can, regardless of what party the admin is, to find ways of agreement to support business. So we're going to take the ones where we can.
Any other questions for Katelyn? Well, Katelyn, thank you for traveling to visit us. It's great to have hosted you for the first time here. We're now going to move into a topic that nobody's heard anything about lately. And that is that topic of data centers. I want to first of all, there have been 2 city council meetings that I don't think we really have seen the best of our citizenry. And when the free market brings ideas to our city council, it is important that those ideas are vetted and considered. And we have had a lot of activists out giving information that has not entirely been factual whatsoever. We as an organization felt it very important to give our business community a very factual, direct from the company information. And so while our board of directors has not taken official position on data centers in our city, we do feel it's extremely important to share information that's factual with our members. And so that is exactly what we intend to do today. And we are also hopeful that a number of people who are coming and voicing their thoughts on data centers are to watch this and to understand the facts behind what is being presented to our city as possible inclusion in our economic development policy. So it is a pleasure to introduce you to Jeff Bladen, Head of Energy and Policy at Verrus. Jeff, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Tom. And I just first off, one, appreciate the opportunity to be here to talk to this group. I have some prepared remarks, and so I'm going to try and go through those. Before we go through the details in the slides, we're certainly going to be, the slides are going to be available to share as well. But I just want to say first, thank you, Tom. Thank you to the Chamber for having us here. It's an opportunity to speak with you that we ultimately really value. I also want to extend the apologies of our CEO, Nelson, who was not able to travel yesterday due to a pretty nasty cold. So you got me instead, for better or for worse. So I guess I'm going to start with the elephant in the room. You might have noticed the last few weeks haven't exactly given us many opportunities to tell the story in person, maybe directly to the residents of Salem. So that's part of what I'm hoping to do today. I'll just say that, while I'm here today in my role as head of energy and policy for Verrus, I'm also here as a person who personally believes data center builders and operators need to do better. After a half dozen years in the hyperscale data center world, including some time leading power for one of the largest companies in the world, and before that, about 25 years in the energy space, really focused on keeping our power grid reliable and affordable, I was personally drawn to Verrus's unique mission to build that better data center that I knew was possible. So it's better for the grid, but also better for preserving our natural resources. So for the past year, I've had the chance to get to know a lot more about Oregon, and I have come to believe that Verrus's values are actually directly in sync with how policymakers have been seeking to advance Oregon's economic future while still holding firm on crucial social and environmental values. That those things do not have to exist in conflict with each other, and that's exactly why we started Verrus. So you've heard, as Tom pointed out, you've heard a lot of voices calling for accountability, transparency, strict standards on data center development. I'm here to tell you, loud and unequivocally, we agree. From our founding a few years ago, Verrus has led with our core belief that supporting economic development does not have to come at the expense of protecting things that we all rely on: our water, our air, our natural landscape, our quality of life. What's getting lost in the noise around our proposal is that the team at Verrus came together exactly because we've seen firsthand the old way of building data centers, and we know from our decades of experience that there is a better way. So we remain committed to a respectful dialogue, to answering the community's questions, to working collaboratively toward a project that provides real and measurable benefits to Salem and Oregon in general. So this is, and we recognize it's a uniquely challenging moment on our national discourse. The response we're seeing around data centers is not unique to Salem or Verrus or Oregon. Despite what you may have heard, though, we are listening. We came into this process with a different approach than other data center companies. That included making our proposal public long before any final decisions were made or any site plans submitted, let alone approved. So we came with the intention to listen, to learn, to understand what the people and voices of Salem are telling us. That we want to deliver the kind of significant, significant economic investment and increased tax base that Salem has been seeking, but without the compromises that other data centers might impose. So to be clear, we know we don't have all the answers for what a better data center might mean for Salem, but we're hopeful that forums like today can be the start of a constructive dialogue where important local goals and needs are identified and integrated into the plans where they may be missing. Understand that data center development raises legitimate questions and concerns for those in the community, probably for many of you in this room today as well. Those concerns deserve to be heard and addressed. We are ready and willing to engage. Our only request is to be given, as Tom said, an opportunity to have our vision for building a better data center evaluated on its merits, to share not only our own expertise and commitments, and we'll talk about that today, but also the details of in-depth, third-party, multi-year assessments already done on our new data center design by experts on energy and natural resources at places like the Department of Energy's National Lab of the Rockies. Started this process wanting residents, neighboring property owners, tribal representatives, local businesses, community organizations, and city leaders to have the opportunity to ask difficult questions and to help us develop a better project. That commitment includes a proposal to negotiate a formal and binding community benefits agreement, one that would create clear, enforceable commitments reflecting Salem's priorities. So I'll just be as clear as I can. The data center industry has not always earned the trust of communities, nor have some data centers been good stewards of our national resources. I'm here to tell you, though, that data centers can be designed to use significantly less water to support the power grid. Excuse me. To support the power grid, to be quieter, to be ultimately a great investment for the community. So that's what we came together at Verrus to do. That's what I'm here to tell you more about. We can go to the slides now, and I just really appreciate the chance to be here today. If we can go to the next slide. So I'm old enough that I can't read that far away, so I'm going to watch my slides here on the screen. So Verrus, as I alluded to in my opening comments, was built by data center veterans. So everybody on this screen, as well as the rest of our leadership team, have decades and decades of experience building hyperscale data centers for some of the largest companies in the world. Our CEO, for instance, commissioned the first data center that Google ever built. Our head of product development, who's in the room, worked very closely with Nelson for many years at Google and other places. Our chief technology officer spent decades in the data center world. I came from Meta, where I helped lead a very large and capable energy team. Before that, I spent decades in the energy world at big grid operators in the East. We all came together because we knew there was a better way to build data centers that wasn't getting built. And that's what we're proposing to do here in Salem. If we can go to the next slide. So I apologize for the small text. Like I said, we'll distribute the slides. So phase one is moving forward. We submitted our formal site plan proposal earlier this week. And it is the beginning of a very rigorous and thoughtful land use review and approval process. No approvals have been given so far, nor would we have tried to get approvals without significant public review and assessment. And it's really important for us to make sure folks understand that this is very different than other data centers and how they've operated in the dark of night. Many other data center proposals wouldn't be proposals. In fact, they would be done deals that are already moving forward before the public gets an eye on them. We've inverted that. We've said we want the public to have eyes on this proposal just as it comes to start taking shape. So, as is noted here, there was a public announcement. It was the moment at which we recognized there was a project to do here to invest in Salem, that it was time to start gathering lots of public input on how to make sure that we did the best project that we could, that really benefited all of Salem. There, as is noted, there was a couple of city council meetings. Tom made reference to them. There was a special session announced as well. As I'm sure you all saw in the news media, there was an announcement by the governor regarding some land that we're under contract with the state to be part of this project. And so with that announcement, we've determined that it made sense to move forward in a multi-phase process, where the first phase represents the bulk of the proposal on land that is not included in the state land. And we are now kicking off with, meetings like today, a community engagement process where we really want to hear the voices of the business community, civic leadership, community leadership, to understand how we can make this better. And I'll talk to you about many of the headline issues that people raise: water, noise, impact on our power grid, and so on. But we want to also ensure that we include other concerns. How could we invest in the community in ways that maybe are not directly attached to the data center, right? We're gonna have better power. We're gonna have low noise. We're gonna have low water consumption. But those are table stakes for us. There are other ways in which we can invest in the community that we want to learn about, but we don't want to assume that what we think might be useful in Salem is what Salem residents themselves would prioritize. And so where the investment can be most impactful is what we want to get feedback on. We can go to the next slide. All right, so one of the knocks on data centers, and it's, there is always a kernel of truth into things that people say about topics like this. One of the knocks is they use a lot of water. And there is a history of data centers built a decade or more ago of using millions of gallons of water a day, particularly in places where water is not scarce. That's in most respects no longer the case. And we have designed our data center to be a very low water using facility. I said it in some news interviews over the last few weeks. You could compare our use to something like half of what an 18-hole golf course might use. It's equivalent to roughly 2 or 3 sit-down restaurants. If you want to scale a restaurant, think of like a Cheesecake Factory. It is not a massive using water facility like data centers of old. And we accomplish that with the kind of cooling system that I'm sure many people in this room have businesses that use. These are closed loop cooling systems. I think just about every high-rise office building at Salem or Portland or anywhere else in the state uses a closed loop cooling system. These are not unknown. This is an understood technology. It uses almost entirely plain old water. There are some additives to it, but they're the same kind of additives you'd put in a swimming pool, or that you might find in the shampoo you use to wash your hair every morning. They're designed to pH balance the water to make sure that we don't grow algae in it and so on. But there's nothing polluting about them. There's nothing unusual about them. These are systems that are used broadly in commercial office buildings around the country and certainly around Oregon. And so we've designed this system to be as respectful of water as a natural resource as is possible, while still delivering all those other benefits that come with economic investment. I will note that there are some that will take things out of context intentionally to suggest that we're going to use a lot more water than this. We saw a news report just the other day, maybe it was even yesterday, that suggested we would use 10 times as much water as we're actually going to use. It's simply not true. We have one of the challenges with closed loop cooling systems, and this is a significant concern of ours, is that if not done correctly, they can use a lot more energy. And so in order to minimize the energy use and the water use, we've designed a system that a few days of the year, really just the very hottest days of the year, maybe 10 or so, we have the ability to do some simple misting of atomized water. It's just, you think of what you might find at a Caribbean resort by the next to the pool, right? A mister that that cools you off when you're by the pool. Those will mist into the air exchangers, and it dramatically reduces the energy consumption as a result. And so it allows us to have energy consumption at the lowest possible level while also minimizing water use. And it is the kind of innovation that we came together to bring to the data center world that really hasn't been implemented at scale by other data center developers. It's implemented in other industries, but it hasn't been fully adopted by data centers. And we wanted to make sure that it was becoming standard for data centers. To be clear, our expectation is to make firm and enforceable commitments on water usage. That this isn't just some empty promise that we will put in writing as part of a agreement with the city or with the appropriate authorities, that our water use will not exceed the amount we commit to. We have no worries about that. Our design itself is designed to be, and the equipment we will be installing is going to be efficient. That simple. We're simply not going to do more than we say we're going to do, and we're willing to put our money where our mouth is, so to speak. We can go to the next slide. So the biggest questions we get asked are, what is Salem getting out of this? It starts with about $5 billion in investment, capital investment. That looks like a significant property tax base increase. It is thousands of construction jobs for many years. Our expectation is that the construction would go on in a multi-phase project for certainly many years, and so thousands of construction jobs, and lots of supporting jobs for that construction that we don't even suggest to try and count as part of the proposal. But you can imagine all of the businesses that would support the construction workers while they're engaged in that construction process. There is an economic incentive or a development zone at this location at Mill Creek that provides a 3-year tax abatement. That's it. That's all there is. So for the life of this, 30 to 50-year asset, there is a massive property tax base valuation that would be part of what Salem benefits from. We also intend, as I mentioned earlier, to develop community benefits agreement that would identify other areas for us to be investing in the community. And again, I've been part of community benefits agreements that invest in the schools, that invest in the fire department, that invest in training programs for trades, that invest in emergency medical services, and so on. But again, we are not going to attempt to suggest we know where the most impact could be in this community. And rather, we want the feedback of what would be the most impactful things to include in a community benefits agreement. That agreement would also include enforceable things like water limits and so on, legally enforceable. One of the other questions we get quite often is about noise. And I know you can look online if you seek noisy data centers and see some that are noisy. I'm telling you, that's not what we're building. In most cases, those are former or current crypto miners that are not really investing in the modern, quiet technology that we are investing in. Moreover, our primary backup technology is not diesel generators, although we may have some. They are not the primary backup technology. We use battery energy storage, which is absolutely quiet as the primary backup technology, and it gets to the next question about the power grid and why it's better. But we use ultra low noise cooling systems, so the fans are quiet. We use sound attenuation barriers as well. We have berms at the property barrier. We have foliage that helps noise attenuate. A modern data center done the right way, especially with what we're doing with low noise equipment, battery energy storage, and the like, is no noisier than your average commercial office building, which of course has air conditioning. So that's what you can expect, and we would certainly abide by the existing noise limitation requirements that are already in the zoning. But as I said earlier, the land use process in Salem is diligent and rigorous, and we'll expect noise studies and the like to show scientifically noise will be at, or in our case, we think well under the noise limits for a site like this one. You know, I left out in my opening comments, but I think it's worth noting. One of the things that Verrus does differently, and part of what drew us to Salem as a place to do business, is that we look for sites and partners that are already focused on economic development, particularly industrial zones that are already identified for this kind of development. It's not really our desire to go to places and take verdant agricultural land and convert it into an industrial site. So we have worked with towns across the country that are seeking economic development, that have identified specific areas where they believe industrial development is appropriate. And that's where we've focused, is because we believe the communities know best on where and when industrial development should occur. And we want to align with those communities that are identifying those locations, time and place. We also look to work with utility partners, and I point this out because I want to get at the strain the grid question. We look for utility partners that are interested in working with us to take full advantage of the advanced capabilities that we're designing in from the ground up to be an asset to the grid rather than a strain. And Portland General Electric has been a great partner at identifying how they would take advantage of the unique and forward thinking capabilities we're designing in. So the question is, won't this strain the grid? It's a massive electrical draw, and are my lights going to go out? Are my rates going to go up? And so on. And the short answer is, this was part of our mission from day one, was to design a data center that instead of being a liability to the grid could be an asset. And for those that haven't spent much time in the energy world like I have, or Wendy in the back of the room from Portland General, I'm sure could speak to this as well. We actually only use our grid about 60% of its total capacity, as crazy as that sounds. This massive, hundreds of trillions of dollars invested in a power grid, only use it to about 60% of its capacity. And the way to think about it is that we design our power grid to be reliable every day of the year. But being reliable on the hottest summer day in August is way different than being reliable on a very temperate day in April. And so we have all of this infrastructure built, transmission lines, power plants, and so on, to make sure that we have enough available just for those few hottest days of the year. There's some places where coldest day matters, but here in Oregon, it's hottest day of the year. And so that means that almost every other day of the year, maybe there's 5 or 6 of those, almost every other day of the year, we're using a whole lot less of our grid. We're using less of our power plants, we're using less of our transmission system. And so what we recognized in redesigning the data center from the ground up was, if we could reduce our demand to as little as 0 if needed on those days, that we could get more out of the grid we have without having to build a lot more grid and still contribute to paying for the existing system. So it's a win-win in that we can build a data center that invests in the community, that delivers all of the economic benefits I described without straining the grid. Yeah.
I want to make sure we have enough time.
Yeah.
For Q&A and.
Yeah, I apologize.
Do you care if we jump right into that?
No, let's do that.
Okay. So take questions from the audience. Yes, Zachary.
In other communities that you seen a similar kind of reaction that you've seen here in Salem, so this isn't just unique to Salem.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. It's a national, national discourse issue right now that there is a lot of concern, and I think rightly so. People should have their honest questions answered directly. So we are seeing it in, I think, every location around the country, whether it's here, Michigan, Virginia, Texas, you go down the list, you're seeing the same kinds of feedback that there are concerns about things like water and noise and energy and so on. And all of them, as crazy as it sounds, this is what Verrus was built for, was to address all of these, what people feel like are emerging concerns, but they were concerns that people in the industry like us, we knew about them 5 years ago, and we were aiming to change how data centers operated because of them.
Mark?
Yes, we're losing power because when they do the damn drawdowns, we don't get power out of our fans anymore. I'm wondering how many acres of solar panels we need.
So our expectation is two things. One, that when those days of the year come that the grid is stressed, we would be reducing demand in coordination with Portland General. So we shouldn't be adding any strain to the grid. But moreover, we would be part of supporting the already existing Oregon law, the Power Act reaffirmed this in 2024, that requires investing in clean energy resources as part of serving the data center. So that I can certainly let Portland General speak to what the law requires, but our expectation is to support the investment in new clean energy resources sufficient to meet the needs of the data center, in addition to us providing the batteries as a resource to the grid to help manage any stress.
Chris Blackburn, you'll be next, but want to pop in, want a couple online. Did Verrus engage with the Carpenters Union to attend city council meetings?
I mean, I think it's important to remember that we are a developer of large facilities, and so we engage with and we believe in using organized and union labor for our facilities. So of course, we're talking to organizations about the potential for what they could do to support construction of a facility like this. I think the carpenters see the opportunity and want to be part of supporting its development.
Is the closed loop cooling the same or related to geothermal cooling?
It is not the same as geothermal cooling. This is a traditional, more broadly deployed kind of cooling system. Geothermal is an interesting kind of opportunity in some locations. It's not always viable in every location. I would describe this as a more traditional type of cooling system.
Okay. Chris?
My questions might be a little rhetorical, only for clarification. Data centers are going to be built in the US. We already have probably 300 or 400 of them, right? We know that. And so one of the questions is your data center the most cutting edge data that will impact the community the least?
That is our goal, is to use well understood technologies and deploy them to meet all of the concerns people have about data centers. I'm not aware of anybody else building a data center that adopts all of these modern technologies.
Look at the history with SIP, the other that do you think Oregon's going to hold you to the highest standards? And again, rhetorical question. It clearly appears to me we're holding you. And if you don't build it here, they're going to be built somewhere else in the US, maybe by someone else who's not your standards, is what I'm assuming. They'll build them lots of different ways where people not as many eyes, right?
Yeah, I'm going to answer the question a little differently than you asked it, just because I think it's important to understand. Every one of us in this room and all of our neighbors and all of our friends are using data in the digital economy more and more every day. That growth is extraordinary. The demand for new compute to supplement what already exists is extraordinary. And so there is a lot of activity to try and meet the demand that we are all creating from our use of the digital economy. And our goal at Verrus is to meet that demand in the most sustainable, in the most grid friendly, in the most affordable way possible, using modern technology that hasn't always been broadly adopted by data centers historically.
Following up on that, if we were to do the same deals where bring in no events, but it bring in probably 100,000 with impact on roads and everything else. So you're trying to figure what else. I'm in support of it, right? If it's done correctly. probably one of the largest. What I'm trying to establish is, will you guys eat your own cooking? I've got 60 or 90 acres of residential that is right there. We've got the potential of 177 acres. Definitely put a 5 megawatt community solar. There's right adjacent, kind of right where the DAS's property was. We have a couple of different plans that I'm trying to find partners with uses over 3 acres of mixed use. So for me, it's really important to understand what I have as a partner. And of course, seeing the community going, what else can you do as a developer when you have to do offsite? You know, there's a lot that people ask, why can't you do this? This is bigger, but I'll reach out with you or Nelson and say, here's where I think are some hot points that you would help Oregon or Salem in general, if you're going to be part of that legacy. Literally what Sidewalk Infrastructure Partners says with that community. It's not just going to be your data center, you're an integrated, really important to say.
Well, appreciate the openness to partnering. That is exactly what we want to be doing, is engaging with community members, engaging with neighbors to identify how can we be supportive of not just the investment that we're making, but how can it be a catalyst for other investment as well.
So just one, definitely, but
DJ.
I want to say, as a city councilor that participated in the acquisition of this land and the rezone, I want to say thank you for coming and doing what you're doing. This is exactly what we were thinking about when we took property that was not paying anything in property tax, that was owned by the state, and bought it, rezoned it for industrial use. Couldn't be any better of a use. So thank you for that. A lot of the people that showed up at the city council meetings, not from Salem, so.
Well, we appreciate your forethought, and we want to be a good steward of the land that you identified for this kind of development, and make sure that folks see that, even industrial development can be a quiet and clean neighbor.
Oh,
I just wanted to clarify from the San Kaiser Public Schools. On slide 3, it says it'll be more tax resident schools. You'll be paying property taxes, and it will help to spread the tax load across all the taxpayers, and that's a great thing. The way Oregon works in the piece, it's not more revenues than enforcement. So that's something we correct that on the slides.
Yeah.
Again, not a statement for or against. I hope we continue to explore this with your company.
Yeah, thank you for that, and we'll clarify it as clearly as we can that the tax revenue, of course, goes through whatever the proper channels are for property tax revenue distribution.
Yes, Steve.
Hi, so what you're saying sounds great, and what I'm hearing is no calories, no sugar, but maybe so what holds the fire?
So there's a handful of legally binding things that will hold our feet to the fire, and I'll go down a list. So from a community standpoint, we expect to have a very detailed and rigorous land use review process that will look at nearly all of the things that people raise most. Some of them are state related, and I'll get to that in a minute, but water use, noise, and so on, we're going to be going in deep with city experts. And I'm hopeful, if the city feels like they don't have all the expertise they need, that they will turn to some in this community to help identify where the expertise can come from. We are looking forward to the rigor, looking forward to demonstrating that we are in fact going to build something that is different than other data centers. So it starts with a public land use review process where nothing has been agreed to in advance, and we have to prove everything we're doing is what we say we're doing. So, I'll leave it to the city to speak to how they view the diligence of their land use process. But we, based on our review, see it as a good thing, that we want to stand up and show how what we're doing is different. State level, and what I mean by that is at the state electric regulatory level, there are new laws in place and new regulations in place that will hold us accountable for electricity. So I give Oregon a lot of credit, frankly, leading the nation in this regard in many versus many, actually most states. 2024, Oregon passed the Power Act. The Power Act set in motion a whole bunch of requirements for large customers like Verrus that we are obligated And PG is obligated to enforce this. The Public Utility Commission is obligated to enforce this, to pay for every dollar of new infrastructure that is built to support our data center, every single dollar. And we are obligated under the new rate that the Utility Commission just approved, specific for data centers, to pay candidly, I'll use pretty big, massive exit fee to pay for all of that infrastructure if for some reason our facility were to close. And so the state has gotten ahead of this as it relates to electricity, that they've set in motion requirements for minimum fees that you have to pay every single month to make sure you're paying for the infrastructure. And if there is ever an event where for some reason there's a large legally binding penalty that has to be paid, and that's all in Oregon law and regulation. And we would be signing up for that because we feel absolutely confident that what we can build will be a shining example of the right kind of development.
What kind of reinsurances can you give somebody whose home is located in a mile of the data center that I would have no idea that it's there?
Yeah. I think it's there's only so many things that we can say. I think ultimately, we are going to look to the city to provide in a public venue the evidence that the noise levels will be at a level that are what you would expect, or probably a lot better than the industrial zone it calls for. That we are actually going to be using batteries as our primary backup, and that's part of the plan we submitted. That we are actually designing and installing the closed loop cooling system that does exactly what we described, and those are detailed in the plans that we submitted to the city. And so you don't have to just take my word for it. If you really wanted to dive in and look at those plans, they are publicly posted by the city. And I would certainly expect the city to bring in the expertise to examine those plans and hold us accountable if anything we're saying isn't what those plans actually describe.
Yeah, and Phil, give me 1 second. Question from our online audience. The term legally enforceable was used in regards to water use and sound limiting. Can you dive into what that would mean?
I think there's sort of two levels to it. I mean, obviously the city already has code requirements that we'll have to abide by, and those code requirements would be legally enforceable. Beyond that, we expect to develop a community benefits agreement that is also legally enforceable, that would that holds our feet to the fire if we're actually doing something outside what we agreed to. The exact terms of a community benefits agreement are to be determined, and we want to have a conversation with the city about how to develop something that you can feel comfortable with.
Yeah, and for those who have not, and it is very seldom you get involved with this, but those who have not built a facility from the ground up, I was fortunate in my 15 years of the private sector to be a part of that. You sign agreements on what you're creating, and then the city comes and through multiple permitting and observes what you're actually creating and signing off on that. And so there are guardrails to this all. I would also share that the NDA is something that came up that was very troubling for a number of our residents as they shared. For perspective, when we went into a market, we would work with a city who's trying to recruit a company, a manufacturing company, to come into that community. If we were to have not done that and just been open and transparent, saying, hey, we're thinking about coming here, our primary competitor is looking at placing their plant near us and the like. So NDAs actually have a really important business strategy platform that's important to understand behind. It's not to be nefarious or have something going on outside of public's knowledge. It's actually a competitive environment where we're competing against real other companies to be placed in certain markets. So I think the NDA needs a little deeper understanding by some people in our communities as to what the strategy and why they are so important in the current market of recruitment to communities.
Can I add something to that? Because I appreciate you saying that, Tom. I also want to note that unlike other data center developments, once it became clear that there was a data center project to have a conversation about, we wanted to remove that NDA. But again, long before any deal was done, long before anything was approved, all ahead of a publicly open vetting process for the project. That, in fact, some of the questions we're getting today about what's the answer to what does legally binding mean is a function of how early in the process we are, that we don't have a community benefits agreement negotiated because we opened this up for public scrutiny so early relative to how other data centers approach things, that I can't say what the community benefits agreement is because we want to have the community actually inform that rather than some backroom deal with city management or with the city councilors. That's not how we want to operate.
We appreciate it.
Yeah, Bill, hey, Tom, thanks. I appreciate that today. Second, is this a step and repeat facility? You have another one where you can, hey, what is the noise? Just go right up to it and listen. Or is this something new that is not done yet?
So many of I think the short answer is we do not have a full scale operating data center that you can go and visit today. All of the technologies we're talking about, though, are implemented in various forms in various places. So large-scale battery energy storage is already in operations in Oregon as part of Portland General Electric's operations, for instance. So you can go visit a battery plant and see how quiet they are. Closed loop cooling is in use, and as I said, nearly every large commercial office building that you might find has a closed loop cooling system already in place. And so the technologies we're implementing are well understood and known, and you can go visit facilities that have them. What we're doing, though, is different for the data center industry in that we're adopting the most modern ways of cooling, the most modern ways of integrating with the power grid. And so that's where the innovation is. It's the adoption of all of these things at a data center. But none of them are science projects, if you like. They're all well-known technologies that we're integrating in a way that allows a data center to be a better community member.
Jen.
What drew you here and the why behind it?
Yeah.
My curiosity.
You know, a few things. One, as I said earlier, we want to go to communities that have already identified a desire for and a place for industrial development. That our goal is not to take agricultural land or be right next to neighborhoods in a way that an industrially zoned area is already identified as an appropriate location to build what we're building. Salem obviously has identified this, as we heard earlier, identified it for quite some time as a place for this kind of development. So that was number one. Number two, having a utility partner like Portland General that wants to actually lean into the better way to use a data center as an asset rather than as a strain to the grid was important. So having utilities that are ready and willing to do that was important. And then last, as I've come to know the last year or so, there seems to be a pretty good alignment of values of, being innovative, but at the same time focusing on how do we do development in a responsible way. And that's what Verrus was created for. So having this site in Salem, in Oregon, be one of our first felt like the right answer to a whole bunch of questions that we would have to ask in order to develop. And I left out, there's an extraordinary labor force here that we feel very confident can build the highest quality facilities. There have been data centers built in Oregon for some time, and so there's experience with what we're trying to do. There are battery energy storage facilities in Oregon already, so all of those sort of fundamental things also lined up.
Our intent as an organization, just be aware, we have offered to host there's going to be a number of community gatherings about this topic, and our organization has volunteered to host the business community version of that. So our intent would be to draw a large audience. does not have to be Salem Chamber members, but the whole business community, and welcome them into a greater conversation, which we are hopeful to do just that. But we felt it important to educate you as members to hear a little bit more of what is actually occurring rather than some of the things that we've seen at City Hall, which have been some clear messaging of concerns of people, many from our community, and as noted, some from outside our community. I want to thank the Verrus team for joining us today, and thank you to Hubble and the groups that they're working with. Our intent is always just to keep you informed as members. Again, our organization has not taken an official stance on this yet, but one thing that we do stand for is economic development and asking council and our city management to explore all channels that could bring additional tax revenues to our community, as well as well-paying jobs and responsible corporate partners. So we are going to encourage our city to do just that and explore this opportunity. With that, ladies and gentlemen, our time has concluded today. Thank you for extending a little extra to here today, and what a great audience. 78 people in attendance, as well as those online. Would you join me in thanking a little bit of previews heading into September. We fire up our forum speaker series. Be looking for that. With that, ladies and gentlemen, time today. Have a great